All right. Well, my name is Stephanie Gates, and I am the principal of a Christian K-12 school. And I just wanted to talk this morning about some of the stressors that our teachers are having. We hear a lot about other people are essential workers and are medical professionals and things, but wanted to talk about our teachers and the stress that they are going through. And I want to welcome a guest here with me. And so I will let him introduce himself to you.
All right. Hi. My name's Eric Beasley. I'm a licensed professional counselor in South Carolina. And the majority of my practice and the clients I work with are professionals who are struggling not only in their personal life, but also with work-life balance, things like that. I specialize in relationships, and I also do some work with children. So I'm glad to be here with you.
Awesome. Thank you. And Eric just happens to be my brother, so it's pretty awesome.
That's right.
All right, Eric, I wanted to ask you for advice for teachers. I mean, there's a lot of stress right now. And I think one of the biggest things, they're kind of over the hurdle of how to get online and connect, but then frustration of kids not showing up, frustration of knowing how are they meeting the needs, just a lot of frustration. What are some tips that you might have?
Yeah, when we're dealing these new situations like we have now, where in a lot of ways our whole world has been flipped upside down, and there is not really a normal yet, even though we've been in this for a few weeks now, that frustration is understandable. And I think one of the things that helps with that frustration in how to deal with this is, first of all, have a schedule. That is so important. And I know most teachers probably have developed some kind of schedule by now. And we know we have to be flexible. But if there's certain events throughout the day that we can sort of use to anchor our day, every day, that dependability, that frees up our mental mind power to be able to put that energy towards solving other problems that we have throughout the day. And that introduces that predictability that's so important in our day-to-day life. And so the first thing I would say is with that frustration is make your life as predictable as you can, right? With all of that. But the next part I would say is now more than ever, where we're redefining our duties, whether you're a medical professional, as you said, Stephanie, or you're a teacher, we're redefining our responsibilities. And so having a clear understanding of what's actually within my control and what can I actually do to affect that. And so, whether kids are online or not at the right time is not in our control if we're teachers, right? And whether or not the internet is going to be up is not in our control. And so we recognize that. And in those situations, we can come up with an SOP or a protocol that we're going to do with that. I do a lot of online counseling now. And one of the things that we're finding is technology is such a challenge because everybody is online all day long. And so we've set up these protocols that if we get disconnected, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to try to reconnect the call. Then we're going to try to make a phone call. Then we're going to try to text, right? And that way that introduces that predictability. But also we understand that if we don't connect, that's something that we cannot control. And we're just going to have to let that part of it go and just accept that.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I'd love to touch base on control because being a teacher, when I was a teacher, I, had control of my classroom over the planning of things and how things went. And I think that some teachers may be struggling with that loss of control, and how can they deal with that loss of control in their lives now as it's so different?
Yeah. I think, we always want control. And the reason we seek out that control is because it provides us with safety, right? If I'm in control, then I know what's going to happen. I know how we're going to react. And it makes me feel safe in what I'm doing. I think before this, we thought we had a lot more control of our lives than we actually had. So when we uncover that loss of control that we always had, that we were fooling ourselves, that can make us very uncomfortable and uneasy with all of this. But I think focusing on what are the things that you can control, what are the things you can actually do, right, in your area, and focus on influencing those factors and having those. But the things that we can't control, the weather or internet connection, things like that, when we're facing that loss of control that we have, just because we can't control it doesn't mean we can't influence it. And so in that case, focusing on what are the things in this situation that I can influence, right? It's raining outside, so I don't want to take my kids outside, but can we go into the garage and play the same game, right? How can I influence the situation or change it up so that it'll be a little bit different, but we can get the same benefit out of it, right?
I love that.
Yeah. And so I think that helps in that situation with the control. And the last I would say is looking at areas where, yeah, I understand that I can't control this, but is there another area of my life that I can assert control in that will overall provide me the same level of control in my life, right? And so I may not be able to choose one area, but maybe I can do something in another area, and overall in my life, I'll have that balance that I need. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think kind of along with that control, teachers, we all feel that these kids are our own kids. But then now we are also home with our own kids. And as teachers, we're wanting to be there for all of the kids. But now we're there from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. And then we feel guilty and feel bad over not taking care of our own kids. How can we get some balance in our lives of taking care of our own family?
Yeah, and this is kind of the worst nightmare when it comes to work-life balance. Everything is all together in one big messy pile now, and it's really hard to sort it all out day to day. And so, yeah, it is. That is a big concern, you know. And I know with the teachers, I have 3 children at home, and so I know I'm amazed at how accessible the teachers have made themselves with all of this, and out of their love and care for the students. And that's a wonderful thing. But then again, you do have your own family that you have to take care of, right? And we don't want to live with all this guilt that either we have to choose between letting my family down or letting my, students down, right? That we don't have to live with that. And so I think setting some boundaries, there needs to be times that may be dedicated just to our family, where I'm going to spend time with my children, right? During that. And then there'll be times when I'll be available to other people, right? So I'd say setting those boundaries up in the very beginning, but then also, especially when we're working from home, we need to have that time when we're setting time aside just for us, when we're getting away from our own children, getting away from our students, hopefully getting away from our house if that's possible, but it's not possible for everybody, I understand. And just having that alone time just for us, even if it's only, 15, 20, 30 minutes a day, so that we can kind of reset, center, and rebalance our own lives. So yeah, boundaries with this stuff. You have to set some boundaries with that. Otherwise, we're always going to be, having these conflicts. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, my last question for you is, how do, as teachers, we deal with just feeling so overwhelmed and just maybe feeling anxiety and not sure where it's coming from? And what are some tips that you would have for teachers in how to deal with this?
Yeah. It's difficult when we're in these new situations and we have these unknown emotions. Like you said, we all of a sudden we feel this overwhelming anxiety, or some people have reported sadness, right? People are having panic attacks. People are finding themselves, depressed in bed, not even wanting to get out of bed. So when we're having all of these emotions, if we can regulate them ourselves, right? Making sure that we're getting outside every day and getting some sunshine if possible. Making sure that we're eating a healthy diet. Making sure we're getting exercise. Making sure that we're getting plenty of sleep. Those basics are so important. And so I'd say the first thing is, if we're experiencing all these emotions, make sure that we're covering the bases and just the basic things. Next, we can look at actually regulating that emotion in that moment. And so figure out what things help you regulate your emotion. And I actually have my clients make a list of 10 things they can do that help them feel positive and happy and productive. Things like, the simple things like taking deep breaths, right? That's pretty simple. We can do that. Things like going for a walk, getting some exercise, maybe calling a friend that we can rely on, that we can talk to for a few minutes. Two other things like just doing some simple meditation, or opening up an old photo album, or scrolling through old Facebook pictures of happy memories, and just kind of re-experiencing that can flood us with all those positive emotions. And so I would say going through all of those things in that moment that we're having those negative emotions. But last, I would say, if we find that we're trying to regulate these emotions and it's just not working, no matter what we try, we're still kind of in this funky place or in this really anxious place, and we start to feel trapped, that's when we really need to reach out to a professional, to some form of counselor, psychiatrist, psychologist, reaching out to somebody, in some cases, maybe a pastor, right? And reaching out to those resources that we have, somebody with some professional training that can do that evaluation. Because, just like we talk about cabin fever, we grew up in Montana, and so it's dark and you're inside all the time and you get that cabin fever. Well, now we know there's forms of that, like seasonal affective disorder and things like that. So we want to be able to, if there is something actually going on, we don't want to just ignore it and try to live with it. We want to address it with a professional, because again, we need to be as healthy as we can, not only for ourselves, but for our family, and of course for our students.
Right. Yeah. Well, being at a Christian school, of course, we are God-centered, and I know that you are a Christian and a counselor. And so, any thoughts, closing thoughts there on, bringing God into the center of this?
Yeah, when you're talking about anxiety and depression, and we have all these confusing feelings in these anxious times, one of my favorite things to remember to do is to go back to the Psalms. I love Psalms, and I go back to those because in Psalms, and I use Psalms 13 as an example, so you can look that up later. But David goes through this pattern over and over in the Psalms where he pours his heart out to God, and he really almost questions God's motives, where he's like, God, where are you? Why are you turning your back on me, right? I'm full of anxiety. I need you. Where are you, right? And then he always at the very end closes with, but I know you're here and everything's going to be okay and it's all going to work out great. Thank you for who you are, And so in these times of distress that we have, turning to God and really just pouring it all out, one person told me it's like I'm vomiting up everything to God and just letting him clean up the mess, right? So we just get all that stuff out for God, and really have that time where we open our heart to him. And then we read some of those positive messages that they have, especially at the end of the different Psalms, where it validates that God really does love us. He's really gonna be there for us, right? And I think that helps more than anything. I do have a favorite quote, though, and it's actually not from the Bible, but it's from one of my heroes, which is Winston Churchill. And he has a quote that says, it is Bible related, that says, when you walk through the valley of the shadow of death, don't stop walking. I tell my clients that over and over. It's okay to go through tough times. Just don't get stuck. Don't stop walking. And so making progress on your own is good. Managing your own emotions, setting boundaries, right? Coming up with a schedule. And when that doesn't help, then we find a partner that'll help us, whether it's a spouse, a pastor, a counseling professional, so that we continually move forward. And together we will get through this. We are going to get through this.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you, Eric. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your good knowledge there. And thank you so much for all of this great advice that you have given to us.
Yeah. Well, Stephanie, I appreciate you being willing to do this with me. I had so much fun. And I do want to thank all the teachers out there. I know you may not hear it from all the parents, but as a parent, we really appreciate you. Thank you for what you do every day.
Awesome.